Aloha and welcome to the 2023 HLA conference. My name is Kylee Munro. I will be co-facilitating this session. I'm honored to be joined by Marsi and Keeley Terpstra, and we are all grad students at UH, and we will be presenting a little question and answer session for you all. We're going to keep running through the chat, so if you would like to put any questions in there, that will be great. And we'll dive in. We originally had the idea to do this because people keep asking us questions about what we want to see from jobs or how things are changing. So we're opening up the chat or discussion to anyone who has a question.
And in the lieu of any questions, or as people think of questions, I just feel like I want to say how really inspiring it's been I've got to attend the International Indigenous Librarians Forum last week and this week with HLA. I feel so much more inspired. I'm like, yeah, let's talk about the future. So I hope that, yeah, there are some questions that folks have that they want to bring. Aha, thank you, Brian.
All right. Brian says, what was the most useful or interesting class outside of the LIS program that has helped you with your LIS program? Ooh. Anyone want to take this? Because I might have an idea of how to answer.
I mean, I haven't gotten to take any classes outside of the LIS program yet, so to be determined.
I have a related one. It is part of the LIS program, but I've been working on my internship at Kaimuki Public Library, so sort of outside, and it's been really, really great experience just to see how things are going every day and what changes I can bring in, that they're gracious enough to let me try things out, and it's been a really great opportunity.
I spent my entire summer at Taliesin West, Frank Lloyd Wright's winter home, as a resident intern. And part of that experience, all of the good, all of the bad, really has kind of helped shaped the direction I want to take, the spaces I want to work in, the kinds of collections I want to work in. Because I found myself in a very interesting position of being, what direction do I want to take with my career? Because it felt when I was in the classroom that I was, yes, fulfilling all of the practical needs required of us as students, but I also was getting really excited about, I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I want to try this, and I want to try that. And when I finally put myself into a situation that I thought would be, oh my gosh, this sounds perfect, it wasn't exactly what I anticipated. And I kind of made the realization of, okay, maybe I don't want to go in that direction with my career. All right, we have quite a few questions in the chat, everyone. All right, from Stacy. Aloha, thanks for chatting today. What are you most excited about being a librarian? What are you most concerned about?
Well, I'm hoping to become a public librarian in the very near future. I graduate in May, call me. And I've been really, really enjoying being in the children's side of the building. I just created a middle reader section. I was given permission to do that, and it's been going really well. And I'm so glad to see that, like, we have the opportunity to make space for specific groups. Like, we have the opportunity to create a space just for that group of kids that we don't want in the YA section, because there's, you know, controversial things in those books that they might not be ready for. There's a lot of smooching is really what I'm getting at. And they don't want to be in the same section as their younger siblings. So if we create a little separate space for them, and we don't call it tween because that is so cringe, we can make a space for them and create people who want to come to the library for their whole lives, because we're not letting them fall through those gaps. And what am I most concerned about? I am very concerned that I will, I find myself being less concerned about other things than other of my colleagues. Like, we had a person come in, and it was brought up in the keynote speech just a few minutes ago that, when people who are experiencing homelessness or being unhoused, however we want to put that, they come in and, other people are so concerned about watching them. And I don't feel that way. I think we're providing a safe space. It is a semi-pleasant temperature. There's access to bathrooms, and I don't care if I give you a Band-Aid, if that's what you need. I want to provide that space. So I guess my concern would be, how can I provide that space while still following all the rules and providing a safe space for all of our patrons?
Right. Keeley, do you have an answer to the question?
Oh, sure. I was like, oh, who's next? Yeah, I feel like I'm most excited about creating inclusivity programs. So I was a caregiver for adults with developmental disabilities for a number of years, and I would love to see more inclusive programs, more programs that are inclusive of sensory needs. And I'm also I want to be a children's librarian. So this is also where I'm aiming to be in that kind of area. So just making sure that there are spaces for everybody, and doing, different kinds of like ASL story time or just things like that, I feel like is really important. Hearing from the librarians on Maui and Molokai, how they're doing really incredible like community engagement. I really loved that, and that makes me excited. However, on the like flip side of that coin, that makes me kind of concerned that there's so much that you have to do. You have to advocate for yourself, sometimes to the legislature, sometimes to like, it's not like you're just looking for donors, which is also an important thing. It's actually the state legislature in Hawaii's case. And there's kind of always more that is going to be expected. From what I've heard, all the especially public librarians, similar to teachers, are just kind of, however much you can give, 25% more will be then asked of you. And so I have like some fear about that moving forward, that I will not be able to live up to that, the like standard of excellence that has been set forward by so many of the people in the field that I've gotten to interact with in this so far.
So I am the only one of the trio who is not specifically on a librarianship track. I have been working towards archives and special collections. And so my concerns are a little different to some degree. My husband is in IT, and part of what has made me really excited in my education is seeing where our careers intersect, where technology and education and preservation all kind of come together. That has been something I never expected of myself or of this career to some extent. And that's kind of been a really exciting motivator to want to keep learning and to keep seeing, because there was a point in my life where I was very not tech savvy. Don't let my Apple ecosystem fool you. I still have a lot to learn about those kinds of things. And in terms of concerns, there's always the very large one. My husband is slated to be moving to Florida for a short period of time, and those of us who are very aware of the current climate and situation going on in the state of Florida, I have a lot of those anxieties because I came from a very burnt out place in education, and I worry about having to keep up and having to put on the fight and burning out from trying to fight and to push and to be present. And I'm not quite sure how it's going to turn out, because it's not really something that we can avoid talking about or that we can avoid looking at. It's happening everywhere now, and yeah, it's one of my one of the bigger concerns I have for going into this profession is, how do I create my own longevity as a professional? How do I want to stay here? How do I want to be motivated? Because that's something that really just stopped my educator career in its tracks. All right, our next question is from Christine. What attracted you to the library profession, and what has your experience been in the LIS program?
Ooh, can I go?
Yeah, go for it.
So I have wanted to be a children's librarian since I was 11 years old, and my little homeschooler self just was deeply passionate about going to the library. And I lived in Kailua, so it was Auntie Patty Mearns, who some of you may know, who got to know me and welcomed me in and ended up inviting me to volunteer for the summer reading program and getting me started before I was technically even allowed to volunteer for the library, because I was still just a little too young. And so since then, it's kind of just been a lifelong passion of mine. I worked at Hilo Public Library when I was in high school. I worked at the library in my undergrad, as well as currently working at Hamilton. And so it's been really, really lovely to get to come back to this kind of childhood dream. And I was lucky enough to start the LIS program when there were two like similar classes that were being offered that were both like very much in line with my passion. As far as like, there was the traditional narratives and storytelling with Nyla Fuji-Ibab, who's going to be speaking later today as our keynote speaker, as well as children's literature and media with Mira, which was just fantastic. And so these classes just like so deeply affirmed to me that I was in the right place. I was getting to share space with people who got just as excited talking about the books that they liked to read growing up, or their connections to the library. And it just feels so lovely to be a part of a space that has such intention around community.
Yeah, I came to library school later after the pandemic had me home working as a nanny. So I had like a first grader all day long by ourselves, and that was challenging. And I sort of realized that libraries are the thing that I always wanted. When I was a kid, I had this really amazing school librarian who was just like, after I had poured through everything they had in the collection except sports, they just basically threw the Scholastic catalog at me and said, just let me know what you want. Whatever it is, you can have it. Just let me know what you want. And I handed back this like Christmas list of circled books and just, I want all of these things. And they're still a librarian today. And when I called and said like, hey, hometown librarian that I've known my whole life, I'm going to be a librarian soon, they were so excited. And it's just, the community part has been so wonderful all along. And my experience in school after my first semester has been so overwhelmingly positive. And I feel like, again, the community of it is so wonderful. And it's the thing I had been missing for so long.
I have to second that final statement of the community has been absolutely wonderful in this department. And as I am graduating this semester, stepping into my professional role, it still feels, I don't want to say magical. Magical does not feel like the right word for this situation. But it still feels very supported and very understanding. But what brought me to the program was, as I said before, I was a teacher in the state of California. I taught high school social studies and world history. And when I was living in Washington before moving out here, I was mainly substitute teaching. And I made the decision over the pandemic in 2020. Library school had always kind of been something in the back of my mind. It's something that I think the first time it was mentioned to me, I had a therapist, thank you so much, Mary, who said when I was in a very lost period of my life, she's like, you ever thought about getting a job at the library? Because it sounds like a good fit for you. And that was kind of the very start of my thought of coming into an LIS program. And over 2020 and losing my job and realizing that I couldn't provide as an educator the way I wanted to for my students and what was expected of me as a teacher was not doing it for me professionally, emotionally. And there were a handful of incidents before the pandemic where I came home to my husband and I told him, I'm like, I don't think I can do this forever. Like, I don't think I can. And when we found out he had orders to come here to Hawaii with the Navy, it felt serendipitous. I had a colleague back in California who is a graduate of this program, and she spoke very highly of the program when I was still kind of playing with the idea and not really fully formed of what direction I was taking it. And it was actually really great to have that recommendation from Debbie. And it just felt like the right place at the right time. So that's how I've come here. And the experience has been, how do I put this? It hasn't been everything I wanted, because when I started, it was still late 2021. Everything was still online and a lot of things were still very unsure. But as it's unfolded, it has definitely met the expectations I had and what I wanted to get out of my own education, if that makes sense. All right, next question. Ruth, do you think librarian is a relevant and appropriate title for what you want to do?
Ooh, great question. I love that. I feel like I like the term information professional. I feel like that comes up a lot in our classes, and I appreciate the inclusivity of that. I also do obviously have a lot of like passion, personal connection to the thought of like being a librarian and the kind of almost like mysticism that comes with that. But Kate or Kylee?
I like it. I want to keep it, but I also know that it is sort of a blanket term for in your general patron's mind for someone who works in a library. And I think that I like to compare it to hospitals because that's something people seem to have a better understanding of. Like, everyone who works in a hospital is not a doctor, but that doesn't mean that their job isn't super important in being part of the team. Like, I don't know what all of the CERT people do. They're amazing. How do they keep everything straight? I don't understand. So I think it's sort of a catch-all, and I'm fine with not having that as a clear distinction, but I want the title myself, so. And Kate?
I personally do really like the title of librarian. I do think there's definitely a lot of stereotypes and ideas that come to mind when you do use the phrase I'm a librarian, sure. But I think that's also kind of, there's a little bit of fun in being able to say I'm a librarian, despite the fact that I am kind of leaning towards maybe in the future we do start calling ourselves information professionals, because that is the foundation of what we do. And it would kind of make sense as the role evolves, especially when you start seeing things like ChatGPT coming into very close proximity to what we do and changing the field of how people gather information and work on anything. Right. Next question from John. Have there been things in the program that have not been useful so far? I'm gonna have to think about that one. Would either of you like to take a try at that question?
Kylee, go
Uh,
ahead.
I have been pretty open about my first semester in the program being really rough. I had, been out of school for a long time and decided to go back after many years of doing other things. And I think that a real challenge for me was feeling that there were gatekeepers trying to keep me from doing the things I wanted to do. Like, I don't think that students should know everything right away, or what's the point of being a student? So I think one of the things that has not been useful is like that, not feeling welcomed. I think that as information professionals or librarians, we want to create that space that is inviting and welcoming, and we can't do that if we're feeling like we are prevented from doing that. So
I think I have my answer. So one thing I have always kind of said when talking about higher education or education in general is that your education is what you make of it. And even if you don't go somewhere fancy like Stanford or Harvard, that you can still gain a really great education from any other institution or any other place. And I think in terms of things that may or may not be useful is really relative. Like, there are things we all have to do. We all have to take 601, and reference work looks very different between archives and between libraries. And a lot of the skills I learned in 601 sometimes don't always fit what I do in my workspace or what I would like to do in my career. And that's okay. And being able to kind of hold both of these ideas, that having the foundational knowledge can be important, but it doesn't necessarily need to transfer over in this way to what I'm doing and how I'm doing it.
I'm going to unmute very quickly, decline to respond to this because my smoke alarms are going off, as you may hear.
Oh no, Keeley, good luck. All right, with that, we are going to move on to the next question from Christine. What have you heard about burnout in your profession, and what is your experience with it? Personally, it's very real. I have yet to experience it in this career path, but it's very real, and it's something that does worry me. It is one of my many concerns about moving forward in anything you do. But also, the fun thing about life is that you can decide to make changes at any point. And if I go through this, spend 10 years in an archive or 10 years in a library and think, I want to go to law school, I could do that. So it's kind of relative, but I also know from personal experience that it's very real, it's very hard, and having a better idea of how to take care of myself and being able to put, this is my work and this is my personal life into the two separate spaces that they deserve is something that I think will really help in the long term.
I have to echo what you're saying and throw in a little personal note that our little trio group chat is like one of the highlights of my day. I think that one of the things that's kept me from feeling extreme burnout is having people I can talk to who are going to be supportive and be like, yep, I've been there. You're fine. We support you. What can we do? And I hope that everyone gets to have friends like those.
I feel like I want to kind of like follow up to that, Kylie, where I've also heard from other librarians that their cohorts from their time in the library program have continued to be that support for them moving forward in their professional careers. They've helped gain jobs and everything. And I feel like I value that, like, intentionality. I think we talked about that a little bit with the last question, but with that in mind, I feel like with working in the academic library that I work in right now, it's been very interesting to observe how the bureaucracy of the environment is what really in like contributes a lot to that burnout. These are people who are passionate and excited about what they're passionate and excited about, but then when you have to fight through 6 different people, or oh, is that really in your department, or is it in this person's department, and it just becomes less easy to bring your passion in that way. That got convoluted, but that's I feel like some of what I've heard about burnout. And it's also been really encouraging to hear about the ways that a lot of folks came together in the pandemic to support each other and creating self-care routines.
All right, so we do still have the question from Ray of what are some career roles that you're interested in exploring? I know they also mentioned that it has already been answered, but would we like to continue further in any of our answers?
I feel extremely passionate about being a YA children's team. I would like to see more of those positions open and then filled. I think that it's so important to keep people coming. You know, we talk about kids aging out of story time when they're like 5, and then we're surprised when they don't come back. So if we have programming available at like every library for them, they will still be here as teens. They will still be here as adults, and we can bridge that gap. That's my more specific answer.
I think if I had to make a career change within this profession, I would probably go back to a middle school library. I was a long-term substitute teacher with one in the state of Washington. It was the most fun and probably one of the most humbling jobs I have ever taken on. And there will never be a moment quite like having one of your students ask for a manga recommendation. And when you say, oh, I think you'd like Inuyasha, they look you dead in the face and say, that's stupid. It was incredibly humbling hearing from a 14-year-old, but it's still one of my favorite stories to tell because kids are just fun and are absolutely unfiltered, but it was also an experience where I got to work with not quite young adults, not quite teenagers, not quite kids from a variety of socioeconomic backgrounds. And honestly, it was really great. And I think if I had to go back, it would be a role I would really love to take on.
I would really love to contribute again. We have gecko eggs in our in-house fire alarm system. It wreaks havoc. Living in the tropics is fun. All
right. I think for our next question, we would really like to hear students' perspectives on AI if they haven't been discussed already. Would either of you like to take that on? Or do you want me to kick the—
well, it was just turned off for now, so I can pitch in my little bit to the as I said, I really would love to be a children's librarian. However, acknowledging kind of similar to what Kate had said, when it comes to their partner, my partner is going to be working in a university setting. And so I also want to be open to potentially having a role in a special collection somewhere. And I appreciate that the program is setting us up to have a broad range of experiences. And then moving on to the AI question, I think that it's interesting and scary in a not very well phrased way. I think it's a fascinating topic of conversation, and it's incredible to acknowledge how much it has already affected our profession, future profession. I also feel like very unqualified to share about my feelings on AI, as I have a very like colloquial, it's not the right word, but like a very kind of like side to the side awareness of AI.
Yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead, Kylie, sorry.
I'm cautiously optimistic that it can be a tool for good. Um, I think that I'm a decent writer, and so the thought of someone just being like, "Hey, I need a paper on this thing," and turning it in is not great. But not everyone is a writer, and if we can figure out a way to make that sort of fair for everyone, and accurate, and not using the story we've all heard of, "Hey, can I have this paper you wrote? I can't find it anywhere," and it's because they never wrote it. If we can find a way to do that, then great. It's yeah, cautiously optimistic.
I have to agree with the cautiously optimistic. Sadly, my husband's not here to express his thoughts on AI because he's a bit more knowledgeable than I am a little bit. It's definitely one of the many things where our careers intersect a little bit, and we've had great dinner time conversations, or we're sitting and watching the news conversations about how it can or cannot affect things in both of our fields. But I'm very much hoping that we will see the legislation required to create standards before fully letting this thing out into the real world, because I think it can be useful. It's interesting, it's helpful, but with any tool, it also comes with consequences. And we may or may not know what those are quite yet. And that is where I kind of sit with my cautious optimism and kind of looking at how the EU is handling a lot of restrictions on AI usage. All right. Next question. What are some tips, advice from your experience in navigating an MLIS program for future students?
Hi, Keeley. I think ask other people who have been in the cohort, who have been in the program for longer. Like, we all work together. We were encouraged to do that from the beginning, and we didn't listen right away, and we should have, because we're all in the same boat. And even if the new cohort coming in, like, ask the people who have been there longer. We've taken those classes, we've done those things. It's not cheating to work together. You all have to have your own answer anyway. But if you say, "Hey, I'm having a hard time understanding this," we're all there to get each other through it.
Yeah, you're not an island in this program. You're really not. Because if you think something is frustrating or you're having a hard time understanding something, you're not the only one who's feeling that way. And the imposter syndrome can be very, very real your first semester, but you just
Or
kind of
second or third or fifth.
third or I'm leaving the program and I still feel the imposter syndrome to a degree. It's, it's temporary. You'll learn to talk the talk, to walk the walk. You will learn what all of these things mean, and it may sound like a second language for now, but you'll get there. You just have to build the foundation, and that's the important part. And if you need to sit down and have a cry, it's okay to sit down and have a cry.
I would also add on to that, like, I don't know, trust your professors to know that you are a person as well as a student. Like, I feel like I can get into this kind of mindset of, oh, I have to be this certain way. I have to present that I'm a good student so that they know that I'm a good student. But I think that just acknowledging that you are a person as well as a student, and that your personness may sometimes come into the path of your being a good student, that doesn't make you any less of a good student, and professors will get that. And like, just being open and honest, and really, like, I think that that's the most important thing. Like, you don't have to suffer in silence. Like, accommodations will generally be made. Like, this is the most understanding group of people that I've ever had the honor to like share space with. So yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Use your words, they'll help you.
All right, everyone, we are coming up on about 10 minutes left. We have about 2 questions left in the chat, so let's hopefully we don't go over time. Second to last question, if you were to speak to your past self before entering the program, what advice would you share with them?
I would remind myself that everyone is on their own timeline. Like, I am only doing 2 classes a semester and working more than full time. So it's okay that it's taking me longer, and it's okay that other people that I came in with are leaving earlier than I am. I'm also by no means the longest serving student in the department. So everyone's on their own path and it's fine.
Ooh. It's okay to be new to things, especially school. I entered the program after being out of school for not quite a decade, but quite some time, and having to readjust to being in school again was one of the very big factors. Like, I've looked back at a few journal entries I wrote when I first started the program as kind of part of my cumulative look back at my time here. And I'm like, it's okay to be new again. It's okay to have to relearn how to do things. It's okay that your schedule doesn't look ideal or everything is not aesthetically pleasing. Like, it's totally fine to be new and be uncomfortable. And it's something that happens to us all.
I feel like I would share something similar to what I just said.
Yeah. All right. And we have what looks like our last question. What things do you wish you could change in the LIS program? What position would you try to recruit if we had permission to hire someone? And what do you wish you could tell future employers or internship supervisors?
One change that I would make to the program is when classes are available. I think that I am quite sure that all of you are tired of having us in little rectangles. But I think that it is just easier for people to come on Zoom sometimes. Like, we're people, just like we've been saying this whole time, and we can't always get into the building in person on time. So keeping that option open, especially if it's cameras on, because I think that shows that I'm paying attention and I want that gold star. I think that is a really, well, not so much a change, but a continuation of a change that I would appreciate.
All right. Ooh. So I think personally, in terms of position I'd like to recruit, I'd really like to bring back someone who's fully dedicated to the archival pathway and archival education. When I started with the program, we had Dr. S in the department, and I felt very fortunate to have her courses as my foundation courses for where I'm going and what I'm doing with my education. I'm also very sorry if you can hear my neighbor's dogs. They're having a really fun time outside. And I think if I entered the program now, my academic trajectory would look very, very different. I don't know if I would have stayed in the archives pathway. I don't know if I would really be considering more of the archives courses, but I feel that I got very fortunate, and I am holding out a lot of hope for my colleagues and my friends who are still in the archives pathway and have started later than I have in the program, that I'm like, well, it's not something that the department can control right now immediately, but in the future, I'd really like to see you guys have the foundational classes and consistency of them being offered that you deserve. And for me, that's probably the one thing I wish I could change, or, if I could just hire someone tomorrow, that would definitely be who I'd like to take on for the department and for everyone else in the program. And I think future employers or internship supervisors is, remember, we are human. We're definitely human. And a lot of the time when we're new, we come to you as someone who is new and we don't know everything. And we're there to learn from you. Because I've been in a situation where I felt that I came to learn and I was not necessarily taught what I had hoped to learn. And that's really important. And I think that kind of makes or breaks any experience in a classroom or in a professional setting.
I feel like I almost want to throw a pipe dream out there. Is that I feel like I've heard from a number of folks that people who are in the library serving or library adjacent field, especially folks who work as library techs in the HSPLS system, have a really hard time to transition into taking classes through the LIS program or getting to like maybe move towards becoming a librarian. And I'd love to see some sort of LIS, HSPLS, I don't know, something to, yeah, exactly, make it more accessible so that there could be, you know, some sort of program maybe where you get to get sponsored to take a class semester or something like that. Like, I don't know. I think that I just want to throw that out there into the ether to just think about that. As far as positions of professors in the program, I don't know. I feel like I have an interest in kind of a lot of the things that are offered currently. It's been a little hard to find like an SLO5, but you know, I guess we worked that out.
We get there in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely do.
Another thing I'd like to see is a more direct pipeline, if you will, for people who want to go into public libraries. Like, I would love to see a way for HSPLS to sort of be like, all right, come on, where do you want to go? And we'll put you there. Because the jobs are open, but they're not always open at the right time for new grads to get them. And especially with internships, if you could just sort of funnel everyone in, that would be another, you know, big, ambitious dream.
All right, everyone. So we are coming up to the very end of our time slot. Do we have any last minute questions or anything else we'd like to say before we say goodbye?
Thank you all for your questions and your engagement. Yeah.
All right, I have to do our closing script. Mahalo to us as speakers, I guess, and all of you for participating in this session. Please use this session's evaluation link in the chat to provide some feedback. This evaluation link is also available in the session description of the schedule on the conference website, and enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. I'm just like reading all the messages.